Hello everyone, I'm Alex from Cytonox, and today I'm going to be ranking the bosses of Persona 5 Strikers from worst to best. It was voted for by the patrons a few months ago, who I must thank for their support, and of course answer the obvious question, why didn't it come out last month? It was technically due to do so after all, but I chose to release it now due to the imminent release of Persona 5 Tactica today, which I just finished playing the first opening half hour of. Anyways, there isn't much to be said here since most of you already know how much I love Persona 5 and its 9 octillion spin-offs. Let's get into the ranking. Number 8, Akane's Joker. This is a hot take for sure, but someone's always going to be mad no matter what you say in one of these videos, so what the hell. As neat of a concept as this is, it's just not fun for me for two reasons. One, you're by yourself. A really big part of Striker's gameplay is synergizing between your party and building your tactics around that. Here you're just fighting Devil May Cry 4 Mission 12 Dante, except less horrible because that boss is a steaming pile of shit. The other issue is that he dodges too much. I hate enemies like that. It never fails to piss me off. It's like being the dude who has to take the ball from everyone else in a game of keep away. You go for him and they're like, yeah, now you missed me. After you run out of SP to score technical hits, your best move is genuinely just spamming the fuck out of the triangle button and kicking his teeth out while spinning around on the stripper poles. On Merciless, this was an enormous slog that took like 9 million years to get through. That was the platinum trophy from hell, let me tell you. I just love shooting things with guns until they die. Where have I seen that before? Akane should try thinking up a boss that doesn't give me PTSD flashbacks to war crimes from the Devil May Cry series. Although, then again, thanks to SMT3, Dante is like ambiguously maybe real in the Persona world. Either way, Akane is like 14 years old or something, so she probably has no idea who the hell he is. Number 7, Mad Rabbit Alice. The Dunning-Kruger effect is an observed phenomenon whereby people with low competency at a task will drastically overestimate their abilities, marked by a point on this graph here that has been comedically dubbed Mount Stupid by its creator. I say this as a preface to my inflammatory opening statement about why I don't really like this boss a lot. It's way too fucking hard, and I don't get why they did that. Now believe me, I hate saying this. A lot of people seem to be under some kind of delusion that I like saying this, as if it's easier in some way than pretending to enjoy things I don't. No, it is in fact not. I am fully aware that I'm plopping my nuts on a silver platter and sliding it under a guillotine formed of 9 gazillion collective skill issue comments from the ever-present confederacy of dunces that plague our channel. It is these people who seem to believe that they are all individually the best player of whatever game it is being discussed, and thus become distraught at any suggestion that the game is anything less than a flawless masterpiece. At least, in most cases, that would be true. Thankfully, this is a Persona video and none of the fans have ever actually played the game, so I don't have to worry about that and I'm free to moan at my leisure. This is the first boss, and I just think it's awkward from a design perspective to make it the hardest boss in the entire game. Your SP is super limited, as is often the case in Persona early games, so you have far less than you need to have Morgana and consistently battering Alice with an adequate amount of magic and technicals. Plus, Alice spends most of the fight spin dashing around the room like a meth head, so you're stuck dodging, which, as I said of Akane's Joker, is just boring. And I know I said I wasn't concerned about it happening on this video, but in all seriousness, I just can't shake this feeling that an onslaught of morons will nonetheless come braying to me like, oh, maybe try using the fireworks around the room. Like, wow, dude, I never thought of that. The fight is saved. Please actually play the game if this was a comment you were in the middle of typing. It is absolutely not enough to make the fight reasonably engaging because she's so damn tanky that you'll inevitably be forced to spam gunshots like with any other boss in my naughty list from this game. If there is a plus to this fight, I'll say that Alice herself definitely feels like the palace owner they put the most care into. She's a lot more present than any of the others and has the most believable backstory of the bunch. I've seen a transformation of my own take place on this channel over time. In the early days, I was bubbling with vigor and youthful naivete, joyously gushing about Dark Souls 2 and Metroid Prime. Now half my commentary is about how much I hate the people watching our videos and inventing comedic ways to hypothetically mutilate myself in lieu of a shitty boss fight. This is what life on the internet does to a man, folks. A heartfelt moment of silence for the bygone era where we censored our swears and our only commenters were RPG fan and Aaron Chong. We love you guys. Number 6, Sophie. This is a boss fight where you aren't supposed to attack, just run away. Need I say more? I'm not saying it shouldn't be in the game because it makes sense for the story, but I cannot imagine anyone playing this leaning forwards at the edge of their seat. If you run around in a giant circle, you're basically untouchable, so you might as well tape your control stick forwards and go take a leak or grab a snack while you run the clock. I'll give this fight one Cytonox point for Ichinose saying them's the breaks before sicking Sophie on you though. The way she talks is really amusing to me, probably because it's how I talk and I love myself. As much as I adore Ichinose, however, this fight is still just story fodder. Number 5, Lock Keepers. One thing that was rather comical about Strikers was how they overcorrected one of the big criticisms of Persona 5. I've seen it said that it's ridiculous how evil most of the palace owners were, and I suppose Atlas saw that too, because here we are. In Strikers, literally every single antagonist has some sob story that explains why they are what they are today, which is often rather amusingly tied to one single incident, in which the character was forever changed from being a good guy to a nefarious, malcontent foil for one of the Phantom Thieves. This incident, as it happens, manifests in the form of a giant monster that you need to beat up before fighting the boss of each region. The one I'm showing footage of here is the guy at the end of the Okinawa jail, which doesn't have a living monarch, but I'm just going over the lock keepers in a general sense. I understand the limitations of a video game as opposed to a book or a film or whatever when it comes to storytelling, chief amongst them that a game is supposed to actually be fun. But the notion that an entire person's self and its evolution can be traced to one singular event is laughable in most cases. I'm not saying they should have spent half an hour showing dialogue from different incidents related to the monarchs, but maybe even sort of the opposite. Instead of isolating a specific moment, just dialogue referring in a vague sense to some time period or experience could be made as a substitute for these repetitive boss fights. Or, even better, they could have tried largely limiting monarch backstories to environmental storytelling in the jails or something. I feel like it would have been really interesting to be a part of the community if they did that when it came out and they tried to piece together what the deal was with each of the monarchs. Then again, I've designed a grand total of 0 video games in my life, so it's totally possible there is some compelling reason against doing this that isn't coming to mind. The lock keepers aren't unpleasant at least, the design is fine behind them, but they lack the uniqueness and flair of the monarch battles to beat many of them out. Thank God they have weaknesses though, these could have been so much worse. Number 4, False God Demiurge. A question I often find myself asking is, would this RPG I'm playing bother my dad? After all, there are an awful lot of these where the final boss is killing God. In fact, it's probably 80% of the things. Ultimately, I'd say not though, because most of the time in actuality it's something far divorced from the traditional concept of God and more like this guy, the Demiurge. Malevolent, tyrannical creator deities seem to be a dime a dozen these days, but thankfully this one is on the better end of the spectrum, boss fight wise, I mean. For starters, it's cool if you know all the esoteric Zoroastrian lore they mined to make this guy. Not in the sense that really adds much to the story, but it makes me feel smart, which I like. Zoroastrian mythos is probably some of the most interesting of any religion, tied with Mormons who think Cain is Bigfoot and heaven means getting your own planet or something. Their missionaries are also banned from playing full-court basketball and swimming according to a reliable, trustworthy listicle that came up when I Google searched for funny Mormon rules. In the world of Persona 5 Strikers, the Demiurge thinks you go to hell if you don't stare at your phone all day, which would spare a decent amount of people luckily and remedies any dissenters by killing them with lasers and balls. It's a long fight, and one that you have to rebeat for a post-game side mission if you're a neurotic completionist like myself, but it manages to avoid a lot of common pitfalls that befell its ilk. I don't know why so many Devil May Cry comparisons are in my head right now, but I thought this guy reminded me of the Savior from 4, which I should add is also a horrendous boss fight that is leagues worse than anything in Strikers. Unlike him, the path to victory is coherent and able to be enjoyed by people who haven't had their brains scooped out of their nose. Running from platform to platform, dodging lasers, and blessing him with lasers of your own is maybe not the most fun thing ever, but I thought it was alright. There's a cool segment where you get to create sub-parties out of your greater group and pit them against his evil orbs, which sounds gimmicky, but I thought actually worked pretty well. These orbs all represent something in Jewish mysticism that I can't pronounce because the only Hebrew I remember is stuff I heard going to my friend's bar mitzvahs when I was in 7th grade. Apologies to the Yehudim amongst our viewers. They all have weaknesses, so it doesn't feel like you're mindlessly wailing on something, which goes a long ways. Nothing sucks more than just button mashing something and feeling like you're getting nowhere. As a villain, Emma/the Demiurge is basically just Yalda Boath round 2, but a robot, which is sorta boring, but it's not a Persona game if there isn't an ass-pull fight with a reality-bending deity at the end, so whatever. Fun despite its length, which isn't something you hear me say often. Number 3, Nightmare Dragon Ango. Ango Natsume is a talentless fraud who became famous from penning novelizations of seasonal animes called things like I got reincarnated as a microphone stand but still get all the ladies with my level 1000 ice magic, probably. We never get the luxury of pouring through his masterfully plagiarized tomes, but the Phantom Thieves spend the entirety of the jail dunking on them for being trite and lame, so I just took their word for it. Thankfully for me, his boss fight is a far cry from the quality of his literature. The fight has environmental hazards that you can use in your favor, much like with Alice, but the kicker is that they aren't single-use, and at this point in the game you have enough tools at your disposal to actually have an engaging fight with him. The best part of the fight is the way he takes damage, though. At first his defense is insanely high, but the more you hit him, the more of his armor falls off, which drastically decreases his resistance the farther you get. The result is a super satisfying, exponential feeling progression that ends in him taking absurd amounts of damage while flailing around in his underwear like a bum. You can play debuff tug of war with him all you want as well, since he sometimes decides to buff himself in the middle of a fight and become a punching bag. One weird fact I learned yesterday from my Japanese professor regarding writing in Japan is that there are apparently a lot of super bizarre sociopathic essays that get submitted in academia. She was saying that when she worked as a professor over there, she would regularly get essays about how somebody planned to mutilate a cat or something in that ilk, and it wasn't just a one-time thing, it was like a semi-regular occurrence. I have no idea what the deal is with that or if there's something funky in the water that makes people go nuts, but it's an interesting fact that all of you now know as well as me. Let it never be said that these videos aren't educational in a kind of bizarre, roundabout way. Anyways, congratulations to Evil Yusuke for legitimately earning an award for once in his life, a bronze medal in the Cytonox Awards. Number 2, Snow Empress Mariko. There are just so many ways to inflict massive damage in this fight, it's awesome. If you know all the tricks, you will be able to finish this fight long before you run out of SP, and every second of it you'll be doing stuff other than button mashing generic attacks. There are a lot of unique gimmicks here that make things more chaotic also, like the blizzards that you need to activate the heaters to counter. A lot of the other bosses had unique attacks, but I think some sort of interesting arena hazard would have improved a lot of them. As a general rule, this game is as fun as the amount of options you have and tasks you need to keep track of, which, when it's at its best, is a lot. That is why I was able to beat it and actually have a really good time instead of getting bored and quitting like I did with Hyrule Warriors and other similar Musou-esque games. Button mashing fodder and the occasional buff dude just isn't stimulating at all, it's mobile game tier entertainment. Mariko has more stuff at play as well, like a rage mode that makes your attacks do technical damage and the ability to eat your party members alive. One bite, down the hatch, gone just like that. But while a lesser game would make this into an annoying bullshit insta-kill, Strikers managed to make it fun with 2 moves. First off, you can remedy this by dropping a chandelier on her, doing lots of damage and freeing your party member in the process. 2, they don't die the moment they get snacked on. Thus, it's almost an opportunity rather than a hindrance. It's just too bad for the poor sap who gets bored. I just imagine that's a very unpleasant experience. Almost as unpleasant as ordering a physical copy of Persona 5 Tactica and then being unable to acquire one at 2 consecutive GameStops and a Walmart. I would go nuts if that happened to me, knowing that everyone else is playing the game right now and everything. Man, I'm glad that's not me. Number 1, Akira the Hero. Akira is a great movie, a hero, and a debatable name for the protagonist of Persona 5, and also the best boss in Strikers. Just take every praise I've given another boss and dump him here with some extra coolness added. For starters, it's a 2-phase boss, and both phases kick ass. The mech is fun to fight and has a varied moveset with lots of opportunities to get your own damage in thanks to the railguns around the room. Rivers in the Desert is also a welcome addition to any fight which is playing for the first half. Of course, it's also to the fight's benefit that he just looks cool as fuck. The mech is great, but the true fight gets going when you blow him up and he pulls out the lightsaber and armor. Persona 5 has some of the best character designs of, like, anything ever, with Akira continuing Shido's trend of the final major palace ruler being swagged out to the nines. This phase lets you use the ruins of the mech to blow up and cause electrical damage to him, as well as launch yourself off of, which is great for mobility and damage opportunities. It's the only proper fight in the game with another humanoid, so it stands out a lot on that front as well. My only footnote, not a complaint necessarily, but a footnote, is that Counter-Strike is a really weird theme. It's absolute fire once it gets going, but when it's not in the fast part, it's super not fitting for the occasion and unusually slow. Congratulations to Akira for being the best boss in the game and also getting away with killing his dad. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like and subscribe and join our Discord server and watch every video we have ever made ever. That's all for now, deuces.